Wool is one of the hardiest, most durable natural fibres, yet it is so contested. How sustainable is it really? I went all the way to the Lake District to meet Maria. She's a shepherd who is championing British wool to the fashion industry.
Fluffy balls.
Wool is one of my favourite fibres, and as someone who teaches others how to shop for a living, I'm always looking to get as deep as possible when it comes to figuring out the sustainability creds of the fabrics that I'm talking about, but finding the best quality of that actually means. This summer, I saw firsthand the impact of synthetic fibres on our planet through a textile association. And seeing these tons of clothes that cannot be recycled because they are made of synthetics like acrylic, polyester and polyamide, it has only impressed on me more the importance of shopping for natural fibres. But for those of us who care about animal welfare and the environment, how sustainable can this really be?
So a lot of people are really heralding like regenerative agriculture and with that regenerative farming as like the more sustainable option for sourcing their food but also materials. Is that really the case?
I think regenerative agriculture is fantastic and is really important because it's what it really is about getting away from inputs. So getting away from synthetic fertilisers, from over-medicating your livestock, just to really working with nature. But it's a slow process to transition, and so when brands are wanting, say, regenerative wool, it's very difficult for farmers to supply that. And what we want to do is work with farmers to help them gather data to show progress being made, rather than, well, we won't buy your wool because you're not regenerative.
Is there like an auditing body? How do you
There
justify?
isn't. So at the moment, I don't know how companies who are saying it's regenerative can prove it. So there's nothing, and in a way, accreditation isn't particularly regenerative in that system.
It's interesting because people consider the primary purpose of livestock to be the meat, and then they will say the wool or the fleece is the byproduct. And what I find a little bit confusing is when I think of byproduct, I almost think of it as similar to waste, not the same but similar. But often the wool can be more expensive than buying meat.
You're comparing buying a raw product, meat, with a processed product, wool. If you're buying a fleece, you could buy that from John. If you gave him £2, he'd be delighted. You know, because when he sells that to the wool board, he gets maybe 30 pence, 40 pence.
For a whole fleece?
For the whole fleece, for sheared wool, for the wool. You see the difference if I keep stapling?
Oh!
Because the cost is in the processing. So that fleece, to wash that will cost me £2. To spin it will cost me, say, £10. Then to weave it is going to have another price, probably another £10. And then you've got all the transport costs in between, and then you've got the dye costs, which might be another £6. That's where the cost is. Right. It's not in the raw material.
Right. Yeah, actually, sheep were kept for wool rather than meat until the industrial revolution, and that more people needed food. So up till then, they were kept mostly for wool, and then the older sheep would be killed for meat, and that's why we ate mutton rather than lamb. Right. Yeah, so nobody ate lamb back in the day.
Do you feel like the goal with promoting British wool is to actually have large brands use it, or is it more...
You know what, I don't even respect large brands anymore. So it's a bit like, I sort of see them as like, why, you know, when you've been burnt once by a bad partner, why would you go back to that? Right. And there's so many small brands, and there's not an awful lot of British wool, and there's so many small, really good ethical brands. So why chase after some brand that you think they don't really care about me? They'll just maybe do it as a one-off, but they'll just try and drive the price down. Why not work with someone who's like-minded? Right. There's so many small brands, just work with them. Come on.
How do you choose between like, oh, it's going to be a working dog versus like he's going to be a sofa dog?
Oh, because I mean he was trained as a working dog, so that's his breeding. And if he was no good, he would end up being a pet, but he is quite good. Come on, good boy, come on. This is an ideal wool when it's like that. It's almost like a web. That's a really good, strong, healthy wool. This is what you want your wool to be like, and it isn't always like that. That's going to be harder to spin. What you really want is when it's like loose like this. So where I get the wool washed, I ask what they do with the lanolin, because there's a lot of lanolin that comes out of the wool. And when I first asked a few years ago, they said, oh, we sell it to Thailand. They use it for food for prawns. So that lanolin from our sheep wool in the UK is feeding prawns in Thailand, which then comes back to the UK, which we eat. They probably make just as much, if not more money from that byproduct.
I still get comments from people asking for wool alternatives because they find wool super itchy. Some people say it's itchy, it's irritating. Some people claim to have an allergy. I've read a study, albeit sponsored by Walmart, that said that wool itself is not actually an allergen. The lanolin is removed, there's no allergen. It is actually the diameter of the fibre, or perhaps how loose the twist is, that is causing the friction, which people believe to be the allergy. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you've never worn wool and you've only worn synthetics, it can feel unusual. I just love the kind of the crunch of British wool, you know, and it has a real presence which a lot of soft synthetics just don't have. You think that's one, I just see landfill in front of me, but also no personality and no character. So I think it is just to do with your body learning tolerance to it. Okay. Yeah.
The wool that Maria gathers from her own farms and neighbouring ones are actually made into Lake District Tweed. It's an amazing initiative that she's come up with to empower farmers so that they're paid fairly, but also highlight the different characteristics that British breeds of sheep can produce.
Yeah, it's all from sheep from 2 different farms in Windermere. Okay. So it's all the processing's done in the northwest. Langdale, Ullswater, Borrowdale, Eskdale, Coniston, Grasmere, Wasdale, Windermere and Haweswater. So we get the yarn made, and then some of it goes into tweed and some of it goes into blankets.
In Victorian times, people had big estates and they wanted some nice animals on their estates. So rather than having a Ferrari or a Maserati sat in front of their big house, they wanted some nice animals to look at. Sheep and cattle and things to look nice on their estate, so they wanted something special. So this chap wanted something that sort of resembled so he bred these, and then he used their wool to make garments for his staff.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Circular King.
And very much inspired by this, I decided to get myself familiar with British wool. Maria's farm shop at Dodgsonwood sells yarn from British sheep, and this is actually the girl who taught me how to knit about a year ago from now. I got myself some skeins, which they turn into balls for me for ease, and I'm going to make something special for the first time using traceable wool, all from a Cheviot sheep. When we think about our clothes, we're often so disconnected from the people and the animals that provide them for us. And in this pursuit to figure out if wool is really sustainable, one thing I realized is that it's not just about quality, but the quality of impact that the makers have, the product has on you, but also the land and each other.